Hello and welcome to the FSA podcast, where we teach online health pros how to sell bigger deals and scale their businesses with more profit. Today, I'm joined by Cam Hall, the founder of Fight the Dad Bod, Dad's Making a Difference Mastermind, and the Impact to Influence. He is a very successful online fitness coach. He's kind of done it all. He's been in a lot of different masterminds. He's picked up a lot from all of them. We had a phenomenal conversation before this podcast, and I was like, dude, I got to get you on for an episode. I feel like you have a wealth of knowledge to offer my audience, having been through so many of the things that, well, to be frank with you, a lot of you have actually struggled with. So Cam, welcome to the show, man.
Well, man, I'm excited to be here, Brent. I appreciate you having me on. It's always exciting to, connect with another guy who's passionate about helping people reach their full potential, especially when it comes to business and leadership and finance. And man, I'm proud to be here. This is a privilege. It really is.
I appreciate that, man. We're gonna jam out. Tell us a little bit about your story, because I know you've done a lot of different coachings. I'm sure you've picked up something from each one of them.
Yep.
You run a very like a wonderful business model. So walk us through kind of the early stages of getting that set up.
Man, the early stages are chaotic, and I think they are for many people. And I think it goes into like my life experience, how I grew up, things that kind of shaped me to be the person that I am. I think we all have a story in our backstory that shapes us into wanting to be a fit pro or to go into that world. And for me, it came from my own struggles with my health, balancing being at that time a husband and dad to young children and still wanting to be fit and healthy and balanced, and while also working full time. Being in education, you and I had this conversation. I feel called to impact youth. That's another thing I do in my life. And so for 16 years, I worked in education, and as a vice principal of a high school of 1,300 kids, had an opportunity to really build relationships. And what I saw through that experience and what I saw through my own lived experience in my own health is that relationships matter. Communication matters, and how we
100%.
interact with other people. That's what we build a business on. Like, we all have knowledge. People can Google knowledge and plans and all that thing. What makes us unique and successful is how we connect with others. And so in 2015, I was on a mission, man. I was on a mission to help other dads live fit, healthy, fulfilled lives with their family through meaningful connection. And so I launched Fight the Dad Bod as it was an Instagram account at the time. That was it. Now we have an Instagram account. I still do that, but on the back end, we have a Facebook community and online community and all that. But it started just me sharing stories of me and my family adventuring, and one thing leads to another. In 2018, it's a full-blown coaching program. Like you said, I jumped into different masterminds. 2020, when the world shut down, everybody's stuck at home, it blew up. Now we got a team navigating that.
Beautiful.
How do you navigate a team of 9 people and have, manage relationships and emotions and personalities and be able to still make sure that you're moving
school.
in the school at that time too. So building Fight the Dad Bod, being a vice principal of a high school during a global pandemic, but also through that time suffered another health setback personally that challenged me to do more, because through my Fight the Dad Bod business, I realized that men needed more. And so I dug a little bit deeper, and we started to think about how men would come in for fitness and weight loss, but they needed connection. They needed accountability. They wanted better relationships with their wives and their kids.
Talk to me about that connection.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, and I don't mean to cut you off, but you mentioned connection a few times, and I know that's like a major component to how you've built the team to the size that it is, but also built a connection with your audience, right? So what does that connection piece look like for you and your clients?
When we connect on a personal level. We all have the logistics, and I don't know how many of your people in your world use Trainer Eyes and programs, all these things. Like we deliver the logistics of our program, but what will set us apart, and I think what men in our community found, is that meaningful one-to-one connection. And it filled me up as much as it filled the other guys up, because what I realized with men specifically, so if you're coaching men, I'm a guy in my mid 40s, and I know that over the last 10 years, I've never felt so much in isolation as I do now. I think men feel isolated, and I realized this going through this on my own. And so I was very adamant about reaching out, connecting, asking real questions, having
Mhm.
personal conversations that weren't just about what are your macros and what workouts are
Right,
you
right.
doing, but digging a little bit deeper. There's a magic line I like to use with my team when we're having a disagreement, or whether it was out of school leading a team of 117 teachers in front of a staff like that, and just say,
Mhm.
well, tell me more about that. Because when you ask
Beautiful
somebody,
question.
tell me more about that, you dig a little bit deeper, and people
Mhm.
know that you're listening and you care. And so
Mhm.
connection is what based Fight the Dad Bod on, Dad's Making a Difference, my professional life, and of course Impact to Influence, where people are like, Cam, I don't know how to navigate my team. I don't know how to communicate with other people. I'm a
Mhm.
really, really, really good coach. I'm really, really struggling at leading a team and building a team. And so
Mhm.
that's another way that we help connect
Yeah,
people with each other.
beautiful. It all
Yeah.
makes sense, and let's dig into that even just like one
Yeah.
more layer. So with men, when do you feel like men kind of go through that phase, that transitory phase where
Mhm.
they feel more isolated? Maybe the high school group chat is kind of fizzled out. They're not on
Yeah.
Snapchat anymore.
No.
They're not really posting. Like when do you feel like that happens for most men?
I think for me and my experience and what I've learned from the men that I've had conversations with, because I love
Mhm.
to learn from other people, I think that's the most valuable part,
Mhm.
is that you start to experience this when quote unquote real life hits you. You get married. Now you
Mhm.
have this bond with somebody else and you're living life together. It's not just your life. When you have kids, this next stage in life where now it's you're living life with somebody else, a significant other, but now you have children that you are responsible for. And
Crazy
you start
concept.
to put your own priorities down the ladder a little bit.
Mm.
I got to
Okay.
prioritize my partner. I got to prioritize my spouse, my kids, my job, my profession, and
Mhm.
things in your own life, like my own mental health, of
Mhm.
taking time for me, start to feel selfish. And so you start pushing those down. Where
I see.
men now, they're not hanging out with their friends as much. Maybe they're not going out for that meal on a Thursday night, watching the game, whatever it is. They
Mhm.
eliminate these things from their routines. And then they struggle to find connection and
I
belonging
see.
and relationships and community. And so we
Community.
tend to, as men, we're programmed first not to ask questions, to be
Mhm.
okay with just having it all figured out.
Yeah.
But two, we're also programmed, like it's hard for us to make friends. And so when everybody goes their own separate way and you're in your 30s and you're trying to make new friends, it seems like such an odd and foreign thing. And so we
Mhm.
have a great opportunity as coaches to break down barriers that are international. Like we can connect with people all over the world and
Yeah.
build community.
Community. Again, that's the big trigger word there for me.
Mhm.
When you can build a community of people, it becomes more than a coaching program. For instance, if I were to sign up for in-person coaching, and this is where online coaching, in my opinion, really has the edge. If I go in person and I go to my gym and I see the trainers kind of doing their thing, it's just you and them,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
not that. Maybe there's a connection component to it, but more often from what I observe, right? It's just do this workout, do this, change this form, do this, right?
Right.
With online, you're put into a group chat. If the coach has done their job, they brought in a lot of similar people to you because it's their ideal avatar. So if you're dealing with a certain issue, probably other people are as well. So
Mhm.
once you build that community aspect, I think that's where businesses really, really excel, where they really start to see that exponential growth
Yeah.
because then referrals are abundant, right?
Yeah.
Or if you don't close a sale, hey, I know you're considering this. I know you're kind of questioning if this would be a good fit. Why don't you talk to Jeff over here?
Mhm.
He's been with us for 3 years now. So I don't know. It just feels like it lubricates the entire business in a way that like helps it function a lot smoother when you have the community aspect.
And let's point to the I think it's a subtle difference between what you mentioned in person and online. But when I
Mhm.
say it, you'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. In person, when you go to your gym and you see somebody training one on one, or even in a group,
Mhm.
that person leading, that person who's passionate about helping people with their health, with their fitness, they're still doing someone else's work. They're coaching someone
Mhm.
else's client in someone else's gym, someone
Mhm.
else's group that other people have signed
Right.
up for. And they're put in that position as a leader to lead this, but it's not really their passion, their thing. Where if you
Mhm.
look at the flip side, for online coaches, They've taken the risk. They have made the choice that this is going to be my thing because I have my own vision, my
Mhm.
own values. I'm shaping this program based on who I am and what I believe is right. And
Mhm.
then you buy into it. And when
Right.
you're fully bought into something and you can communicate that through your actions and your expressions and your language, then that community grows and you start to create, and we know this, you create your own tribe. And
Yep.
when you create that community, that's when you get those referrals. That's when you get that tribe is going to do the work for you. Because I heard a quote one time is work is something you do for someone else. So if you're
Mhm.
in person and you're working, you're doing that for someone else.
100%.
But when you're doing your own thing, the work you do is for the people you're serving. And
Exactly.
that changes. And so I think community is built through people see that they matter to you. And
Mhm.
that's where your business blows up is when people feel that they matter. They're not just another client.
So talk to me about that aspect then, because again, where I really want to pick your brain here, Cam, and you've just done a phenomenal job building a tribe, building a good community, right? And I think everybody that's listening to this probably has some components of their business where they're like, how could I, whether it be like an in-person event or I know Brooke, my girlfriend, like what she'll do with her community is they bake Christmas cookies on Zoom.
Yeah,
They'll
cool.
have wine nights. They have a book club. They have all these
Yeah.
different things where these women can actually come together and just hang out. Like it's
Right.
not always that coach client relationship. So like when the re-sign call comes up
Mm-hmm.
and Brooke, the girl you were just having a glass of wine with 2 weeks ago, it's like, hey, you want to continue? It's like, yeah, I hit my
Yeah,
goals, but we can
of
set some
course.
new ones. I just want to hang out. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if nothing else, they just want to be with the supportive group of like-minded people. So
Yeah.
when you're building that, right? What are like those main core components that you focus on in the beginning to build that tribe?
Mhm. The all starts with fostering effective relationships, right?
Mhm.
Digging in and finding out who people are so that you can serve them in a way that's unique to them. You can
Mhm.
still coach a group. We do cohorts, so we'll have a cohort come together. They'll be very intentionally paired. Probably they have some like interests or things in mind that we found
Mhm.
out about them on their intake, and we put them together in a cohort. And they come in as strangers, and it's really awkward. It really is very, very awkward at
Mhm.
the beginning. But that awkwardness gives opportunity to ask hard questions. And
Mhm.
as you start to have hard questions, everything's off the table. And so we have people who are in our groups, our cohorts, who go in 3 months in, and now they're asking really personal questions. And they're doing their accountability things. We're not even involved. Like their
Wow.
accountability partners, they're connecting on their own time. They're connecting with each other, and they come back for a weekly call. And they're like, here, we connected last week, and this is what's going on. And so we get insight into how this community is building without
Sure.
us actively puppeteering everything. And
Wow.
so when you build community, it's giving ownership over that experience
Yeah.
to the community. Because when you give them freedom to mess up, freedom to ask their own questions, and you say,
Mhm.
this is a safe space, they start to do the work. And they
Mhm.
start to do that work for not me, the business owner, not their coach.
Yeah.
They do that work for their accountability partner, for the people
That
in
is
their
an
group.
interesting concept. So
Yeah, it's
what you're
cool.
doing is giving them some autonomy. Like you learn a lot by coaching. Like when I
Yeah.
was getting into sales, like for me, it was like I was a student, and someone's like, "You should coach me," and I'm like, "Dude, I don't know about that." I learned so much by coaching because of the questions
Yeah.
that people ask. I'm like, "Yeah, I never really put that into words as to why I do that, or I've never had to explain that." So, in a sense, you're giving them autonomy, not for coaching them, like they're not adjusting their partner's macros or anything like that, but what they're doing
No.
is it's genius because in a sense
Yeah.
they're holding themselves accountable because then they have to reach a certain status if they're going to hold someone else accountable. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like just a reciprocity thing back and forth, right?
Yeah, and here's how it shows up. I got a message, it was on January 2nd, of one of our guys in our community who's in Phoenix.
Mhm.
And he sends me a picture. And he's with another one of our members, and they had gone and climbed this mountain in Phoenix. I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you guys know? He's like, well, we're in the same cohort. I didn't realize he lived half an hour away. So
Wow.
we're doing this. We just met each other in person. Like these things are happening in our community. And that's how I find out.
Perfect.
I never said, hey, you two guys should pair up.
Right.
Like they build relationships and then it happens
And
on
how
its
do you
own.
not get referrals from you know what I mean? Like when
You get,
those
oh
things
yeah,
just happen organically within your system, it's so hard not for like if let's say they connect with an old friend, like, oh,
Yeah.
John, what have you been up to? Oh, dude, life's great. I'm fit, I'm active, I have, I'm doing these different things. I climbed a mountain with my buddy the other week. You
Yeah.
should join this program. Like, I imagine that your referral system is quite healthy. Is
It
that a
is.
safe assumption?
Yeah, I would, in almost too healthy at one point where we lost track of
That's a
the
concept.
cold outreach, because that
Yeah.
happens, right? It's like, I
Hmm.
think it was at the end of 2022 where we looked at our numbers and we're like, oh man, 85% of our incoming business is referral.
Wow.
85%.
So it was a
So
safe
we know
assumption.
that the experience inside of it is amazing, but
Hmm.
we still need to bring in new people that, don't know
New
people in
markets.
our community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But the referral bit, I know for all coaches who are doing this, the importance is to ask, make it known, set a standard, give them examples, give them a script to
Hmm.
refer people if you need to, and
Oh,
just take the
absolutely.
guesswork out of it.
I mean, that's people don't. I don't want to say they don't appreciate. I think it's less about appreciation and more about just awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, there are three ways to generate clients, and that is organic, that is paid, and then there's something in the middle that not a lot of people pay attention to, and it's a trillion-dollar industry, and it is referrals.
Yeah.
And you don't get if you don't ask. So, for anyone listening out there, ask for referrals, but foremost, build and cultivate a community or a tribe where people want to refer. Because if they don't really want to refer, then you're just kind of pestering them, right? Now, Cam, the most probably intriguing thing, not to suggest that any of it wasn't intriguing, but how do you set up these accountability partners? What are some things that you look for, and how does that process look? Because I think that's fascinating.
So when guys come in, so in Fight the Dad Bod, so I have two different communities. Okay. So there's the Fight the Dad Bod and there's Dads Making a Difference.
Okay.
And there's similarities between both, but they serve a different client avatar. You can almost think of the graduation program from Fight the Dad Bod when you come in and fitness and health is your focus, and
Hmm.
how we start to seed in that of,
Hmm.
hey, what about your communication with your family and
Mm.
building capacity in your family, building capacity in others, and effective communication. We start to seed that in their experience. And then we find a lot of guys that will jump from Fight the Dad Bod into Dad's Making a Difference. And
Hmm.
so what happens then is now they've seen the model, it's been seeded for them. We build the accountability partners based off of their cohort, which we have their questionnaire and their intake. They come in, we pay, like, do they have kids? Where do they live?
Hmm.
What region are they in? What are their interests? And we start to put them together. We try not to have guys, and this is logistics too. It's hard
Sure.
to run a cohort and a cohort call when you have some guy who lives in Seattle and get another guy who lives in New York, right? Like
So time
their
zones.
time zones are so different. So we use time zones. So we use geographic location. We use interest
Hmm.
levels. We use age demographics. However, we'll like dip people in who have a little bit of younger energy, or in
Hmm.
my case, somebody who's maybe a little bit, I love the word experienced. You can just say
Hmm.
old, but I get that. Well, Cam, you have some experience. Yeah, you just say old, man. That's okay.
Yeah.
But we pair them that way. And then they're in that cohort for 3 months. And so they come into
Mhm.
that cohort, they're in it for 3 months. Most of our clients will stay for 6 months. And so in
Mhm.
that time, now it's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing DMD. What are you thinking? And we start to see this and we see guys come over. Other guys will just stay and Fight the Dad Bod. They just pay the monthly recurring and they just stay in their cohort and they've been there for a
Mhm.
long time. And so now you've got guys who've been in there for a year. They've built solid relationships. And like you said, with your wife's program, very similar. Like, why would I leave? Like
Mhm.
I've gotten my results. I've gotten this, but why would I leave? These guys support me. We do things together.
Mhm.
We do things in person. It's pretty cool that way.
I like the Ascension model. So Fight the Dad Bod is kind of like where
Mm.
people are going to come into. You're going
Yeah.
to set them up with an accountability partner based on all the different factors. You're going to teach them, like, I assume, and again, this is I don't know his program. I'm learning as you guys do, which is why I'm so fascinated. And I've said that a few times. The reason I'm fascinated is because there are so many different ways to structure a coaching program.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just it's a blank canvas. However you want to structure it, is completely open to you. What a lot of people will do is just like bring somebody in, fitness, nutrition, maybe a little bit of mindset coaching, and then they usually have a unique twist. But the Ascension plan here, I really like that component. I always kind of factored Ascension plans in with B2B
Yeah.
and then resigns with
Mhm.
B2C. right? So you sign for
Yeah.
6 months. Okay, you re-sign for 6 months. We run it back. We have the same goal. We just try to get there again, right?
Yeah.
But this is like an actual like destination, which makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. So you sell them in for 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
more of the baseline, the building blocks. I assume some fitness, nutrition habits, things like that. But then throughout
Yep.
those calls, you're digging in, kind of seeing how things are with the family. And then once they ascend, is that more of like, I suppose, like a family lifestyle mindset coaching, or is it more of like fitness still?
Yeah. So it's interesting how this happens. And Fight the Dabble and the DMD, Dad's Making Difference, they're separate entities, right? They're not
Sure.
connected in our marketing, but they are connected in that both are things that I imagined as a human being. Like they're consistent with my values, my mission, my
Hmm.
vision, what I want from my family, what I want for other men. And so there's that consistency between it. The messaging is very similar, even though the demographic is different. And so a guy
Hmm.
will come in, Fight the Dabble. Yeah. Comes in, fitness, nutrition, mindset, timing, time balance, all these things. Work-life balance. These are things that guys navigate. How
Hmm.
do I spend time with my family? How do I fit in my workouts? All that stuff.
Of
So
course.
they come in and they do that. Well, through those conversations, they realize that other men have the same problems, the same
Hmm.
barriers. And so we coach them through that in our group calls. The other
Hmm.
stuff they're doing mainly on their own. Like they can track their meals and they take their
Hmm.
pictures of their meals and their workouts and all that. And that's great. But when we get together for those biweekly calls and they're there, they start to build those connections. And I and my coaches will start to seed like, oh, you know what? That's a great question. We have that in my other group, Dad's Making a Difference. We really have those conversations about work-life balance and how to be meaningful and being attentive. Here's what we had last week in that conversation that I think would be beneficial to you. And
I
so the
see.
seeding is here's what we're talking about in this community. It may be a fit for you. I don't sell them on it. And then
Hmm.
as they're in the 3 months, at the end of the 3 months, I'm like, hey, over our time together, we've spoken about a lot of things. And here's what you've shared with me. You've shared with me that you're struggling with A, B, and C. Well, these
Hmm.
things, as you've heard, are things that we address and really dig deep into in Dad's Making a Difference.
Hmm.
Would you be interested in hearing more about how I feel that you're a fit for that community? It's not for everybody. It might not
Yeah.
be for you. It's a smaller community. It's by application only, but I think you'd be a
Mhm.
fit. And when they hear, oh, it's application only, I might be a fit. He's already been thinking about me.
Mhm.
They're like, yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Love
And
that.
it's actually Dad's Making a Difference. We only got two cohorts in Dad's Making a Difference. It's not a big thing. It's bigger
Mhm.
ticket, but it's not a
Sure.
big thing. But the dads in Dad's Making a Difference are actually guys like me, guys who are
Mhm.
on a mission to help other men. So they come to Fight the Dad Bod and they're like, man, I have friends, I have community members, I have a blog or a business that I could help serve
Mm.
people with. And now they're in Dad's Making a Difference. And this is like this
It's a platform
melting
for them
pot. Yeah,
too.
it's
Yeah.
cool. And the best part is meeting in person, you know,
Yeah.
for our two summits every year. We climb mountains and go skiing and do hard things together. And it's just awesome, man. It's like that community is like that really fills me up. Fight the
Mhm.
Dad Bod's great because it fills up the funnel and it's a
Mhm.
passion and it's kind of running. Uh,
Sure.
but yeah, you got to do what's consistent with you as a coach and start when you're building your Ascension model. Make sure that everything is consistent with who you are and how you
Yes.
communicate.
Yes. So can people be in both simultaneously, or is it once you go up into the other one, you get all that plus this?
Yeah, good question. Guys are not in both, but
Okay.
when guys come straight into the Dad's Making a Difference mastermind group, that group,
Mhm.
their first 3 months, we put them through Fight the Dad Bod. We just don't call
I
it
see.
that.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Wow. So how did you come up with this? Was this something that you just scratched your chin on long enough and you're like, "Hey,
Lots
here it
of
is."
failure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
walk us through those failures. Where
Okay,
where were
so
your
all
roadblock?
right. Roadblock. First project I worked on, I was part of a mastermind group, a large mastermind group for fitness professionals. I
Mhm.
started in that mastermind just the tail end of 2017.
Okay.
And at that point in time, everything was like information product, affiliate marketing. I had no money. Like at that point in
Mhm.
time, we had two young kids. My wife had been on mat leave twice. We were in a bad situation financially. And yet I jumped into this $25,000 a year mastermind
Nice.
and they're like, do this info product, you'll make affiliate partnerships. And so I put 15 grand into building out this product. When you come
Wow.
back at that time, it was like building the funnel, copywriting, imaging, like
Mhm.
clickbait, all of it. And then like, okay, so now we're going to sell this product at $27, and affiliates are going to want 100% of the first two levels, 90% of the second level. Some affiliates want 100 plus 10. So you're not making any money until people get through the funnel. Well, I think we made like 100 sales on that. So I lost so much money. But
What a
through that experience,
crazy concept.
oh man, it was insane. And through that experience, I realized that I'm not just an information giver.
Mhm.
I need connection. So I started to learn about, okay, what fills me up? Because if this is something that I'm going to do, it needs to fill me up too. That's when I went into in person. So at that point in time, the only way for me to do in person with my job was my wife and I together signed a contract with a local university college here, about
Mhm.
13,000 students. We did all their nutrition coaching through their fitness center. And so
Wow.
that was a really good kickoff of like what it was like to work with people, like
Mhm.
one-on-one. My wife had done this for a long time. I had done some way back in the early 2000s. But the problem with that is there was a limit on how much we could charge because it was through the university. And they said, well,
Yeah.
you can only charge this amount of money for 8 weeks. I'm like, this is worth so much more. And so
Mhm.
then we stepped away from that. And I said, well, cool, how do we connect with people? And this is like 2019, end of 2018. How do we connect with people in a way that's effective
Mhm.
while still bringing us to it, bringing me to it, and
Mhm.
getting them results really quickly? And that's when I went one-on-one online for a long time, brought in co-coaches. Everything was one-to-one. We just recently went into the cohort model last year. And that's because I had jumped into another mastermind that was modeled on that. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is amazing. I need to do this and fight the dad bod. So
So
that's what
did
we
they
did.
not teach you it? You went through it and you liked it?
I went through it and I liked
That's
it.
funny.
Yeah, I went through it and I liked it. I was like, tell me more about this model. Why do you do this? And so this is a mastermind in the United States called ISI. I'm the only Canadian guy in it. And so it's like 151 businessmen from all over the United States, really successful guys. And so I started to be part of this cohort. We met every week. And at first it was really weird. And then I was like, wait a second. I like what's happening here. I like the
Mhm.
connections. Well, it's kept me in that mastermind group for 3.5 years. So I
Wow.
was like, something works here. And so I implemented that and Fight That Up on. All of a sudden I saw our community grow. Guys
Mhm.
weren't coming in and leaving. Guys were coming in and wanting to stay. And so
Yeah.
it's all learning by failure and what
Mhm.
works, what doesn't, your own experiences. I've been part of coaching programs. I've done fitness coaching programs. I was a
Mhm.
leadership coach, subcontracted for quite a large business coach. Learned through that. It was, man, a lot of experience,
Done it all.
trial and error, what works. And who knows, man, like 8 months from now, we might look at this and say, it's not working anymore. We need to make a shift.
Sure.
So,
And the fact that you're willing to make a shift and look at it from that lens, the objective lens, where it's like,
yeah.
it's not working, we pivot, and that's business. Can't remember the statistic. It was something. Oh my god, trying to remember the book. I want to say is To Sell as Human, but I
Mm,
could be very wrong on that. But some crazy amount of businesses, I think 80% plus, have to pivot at some point. Like a very small
yeah.
percentage of businesses just get it right the first time.
Yeah.
And all the biggest businesses that you know and love and trust, they've all pivoted. They've all started with
Yeah.
something and then pivoted into something else. So I like that you mentioned that and that you're willing to, if you again can objectively look at it and say, hey, this isn't really effective like it was.
Yeah.
The
That's
other thing,
leadership, right? If I
yeah.
can just say that really quick, like whether you are a solo entrepreneur, a solo coach, or you have a team, one or two, or you're in a team of 9, 15, it's leadership. Leadership is not having all the answers.
Hmm.
Leadership is being okay, understanding that you come from a place of not knowing. And the
Hmm.
leader comes from a space of not knowing. And that allows you to say, hey, we thought we knew, but we don't. Let's shift. And you're okay with it because it's part
Yep.
of that growth process.
Yep. I'm going to let the viewers of my podcast in on a little secret. We're going to be launching this in about a week. So you guys get early access to what we've been doing, but we just did a major pivot in C4F. So if you guys are tuned in, you guys get to hear early. We've only worked with coaches who are doing $10,000 to $15,000 a month for a long time.
Mm.
Typically, those clients come from another business coach to have gotten to that point. And this isn't to speak poorly of anyone. I won't obviously say any names, but what we found Cam, was that a lot of people that would come to us just didn't have the foundation, didn't have the basics. They didn't know how to budget, how to forecast, how to, again, build that tribe, build from the ground up. A lot of it was, hey, post this, use this template. It should get you some clients, and then it does. And then they come to us with no real systems,
Yep.
system structure. So for us, our big pivot, and I was reluctant to do this for the last 2 years, but we are now working with those who are looking to build up to that 10K, right? Where it's been a very hard cutoff, a very strict cutoff,
Yeah.
because we acknowledge that, hey, people are coming to us and they're it's a disservice, I think, in a way, having to start from, you're making 10, 15K, but then you have to rebuild from the ground up again because it wasn't built correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for us, it was that same concept. As a leader of my team, and after a lot of discussions with the team, I'm like, I think we need to help these guys earlier on in the process so that we're not just picking up the sticks. So it's just funny you mentioned that, because that's something that's very relevant for me. You said it was for you, and I'm sure a lot of people listening have considered or had to go through a pivot in their business as well.
It's healthy. I'm glad you're doing that,
Yeah.
because I love what you said about building the foundation. I think every program needs to have a foundation. We were finding in DMD guys weren't having the foundation. You asked the question about, do guys do both? And when I said, well, we start them in DMD doing fight the dad ball, but they don't know. That's just because the first pillar in the DMD is physical and mental health, like prioritizing physical and mental health. And so everybody needs to have a foundation somewhere. So I love that you're doing that, making sure that people are coming in, they have that foundation, because also you get to indoctrinate them a little bit and understanding what your culture is and how you communicate.
Exactly. And a lot of people to get to that 10K, based on what you've told me, you were one of them. You go through multiple programs. It sounds like your entire business structure right now is actually something you observed and didn't actually specifically pay for, which I think is funny how life works sometimes, right?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and make something
and
that
just kind of
speaks to
being
you.
aware. Yeah. So many people, though, that they find themselves in a position, and it's honestly the same for fitness too. This is a real thing in both industries. They go with multiple coaches, they get themselves into debt, they have predatory loans, they have high interest rates, and then they find themselves jaded by the entire industry or by fitness in general. Hey, I had a coach, he got me on a credit card, I paid it off, and then he ghosted me for a month at a time while he was on vacation. Like things like that, it just jades people to the whole industry. So I think if you can help, if you can try to be their first coach, which is not always easy, I think that's where you really cultivate that atmosphere that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people, and it sucks. It's any industry, but it just sucks to see somebody in a poor position that bought something and weren't really delivered on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll get off my soapbox there.
It's okay.
You're still you're still working full time as a principal. Is that right?
For the time being. Yep. Actually, I don't know when this is going to come out, but my wife and I had a sit over here over Christmas break and had a conversation, and so that is likely going to end quite soon. So,
wow.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's an exciting.
Okay. What are the emotions there?
I think can I be honest? I will miss the kids. I will miss the connection, the community. The city that we live in is about 100,000 people. I've been in education for 16 years, so I know a lot of those people. I can't go to a movie or to Costco or to the grocery store without somebody saying Cam or Mr. Hull. So,
are any of them in your program?
I have had past students who are now like 25, 26 who joined into my program, which is kind of cool.
That is wild.
Yeah, it is
about
wild.
Getting them early. You went way up the funnel.
Yeah, way up the funnel. Well, I also did a whole bunch of athlete nutrition stuff for kids in high school. I didn't like the curriculum that was in the school, so I rewrote it and did this whole blood sugar stabilization model for youth athletes. And so we did that. And that's like build relationships with families and with kids. And I've coached their parents, and it's pretty cool. But I'll miss the kids. I'll miss the community. But it's time. It is time for me to just do this full time, which I love the book. If you guys haven't read it, I always recommend a book on a podcast that's not my own because I don't have one. But 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan is such a fantastic book. And it made me think bigger. Like, what do I want? And me stepping away from my profession is not me give that much time into my business. It's actually me going to give less time and be more effective. And so this is it's an exciting time for me and my family.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
So 16 years, you said?
Yeah, I'm in the midst of year 17 right now.
Wow. Okay, so this would be like a new school year thing, right?
Yeah, it's like I have to give, legal notice. So,
Right.
end of this year. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
I know different concept, but it's funny, and maybe I can shed my experience or share my experience. When I left my company, I was doing organ recovery.
Mm.
It felt like, one, it was terrifying, and two, it's really weird. Which you've been in business for a long time, so I'm sure you're acclimated to this. I was new. It's really weird going from having coworkers to just like, you wake up and it's like it's your world.
Yeah.
Like it's all you. If
It's
you
on you
fall
now.
flat on your face, like, yeah, it's such a crazy concept. So if anyone is listening, that has a job and that wants to go into this full time, I'll tell you right now, the excitement for you, it's going to be very different. You're very established. But for those who are really going into the business full time, you're going to have a lot of anxiety for about, give yourself 90 days. I mean, seriously, like 90
9
days.
months.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting, I'm going to quit. I'm doing great. I have momentum and everything's going to be perfect. And then those first couple months, you're like, that isolation that you talked about, very real.
Yeah.
Like I was in my office, like 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see the sun except for the window. And I'm just like, this is not what I thought it would be.
Yeah. This isn't the dream that I had painted on my vision board. Yeah.
No. But what I can say with confidence, because it happened with me, is the income will follow.
Yeah.
I mean, it will. Like you'll have such a fire under your ass, and you'll feel like you're backed into this tiny little corner. And like the only thing you can do is just put in more work to make it happen. And as a result, at least for me, I can speak on my behalf. I worked way harder. I was way more focused. I cared way more when I knew that there was not like that other form of income coming in for me.
Can I share two things for someone
Absolutely.
who might be at that point? First, I know it seems very sexy and dramatic just to cut what you're doing and do something new.
Yeah.
That will create such turmoil in your life. And it might not be financial and might not be relational, but it just will be like such a dramatic change. My encouragement to you is think about it. Have a plan in place before you do it. Create a financial runway and finances or something for you. Like if you're in a job right now that's paying you, stay in that job until you have a runway where you're like, hey, I got 6 months. I got 6 months. I'm debt free. Like these are things that when Kim and I sat down as a family, we're like, I was planning on leaving my position, a year and a half ago, but we had these things we wanted to do. We wanted to pay off our house. We wanted to do all these things. And I knew that I had a well-paying job that could help us do that while we built the business and paid my team and invested things back and gave and was generous. Like these are all things we wanted. So be clear on what you want. And then once you're clear on what you want, you're going to create that plan. So now, I'm older, but I can say, we've accomplished all those things. So now when I take a step out, it's not as dramatic because I'm like, hey man, I got more than a year's wages that we can live, right? Like, so create a plan. The second thing is when you do that, you're like, how do I do this? Okay. What are the strategies? What are the logistics? How do I do this? Stop asking how and start asking who. Who do I need to connect with? Do I need to connect with Brent? Do I need to connect with his team? Do I need to connect with who do I need to connect with that's going to help me get there faster? Because if you continue to stay, and you just mentioned it, and I did the same thing when, the pandemic hit and we were all at home for a year, I did the same thing, closed myself in my office and I thought I just had to do everything. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? So not how, but who. Who do you need to connect with that's really going to accelerate and push through and ask you hard questions? Because that's going to be the biggest difference.
Without a doubt. I mean, even a shadow of a doubt, because I wouldn't be, even remotely close to where I am without everything I did was like hire a mentor, get an ROI, implement it, test it, do all the things. Who's my next mentor? Yeah. What's he good at? And my whole theme for how I hire is I want specialists. Because with anybody you hire, and you're going to hire more than one person, sorry, disclaimer. Even for those people, my clients that are listening, if you're like, oh, Brent, I'm going to stay with you for the next year, that's great. And I want to keep you for as, as long as you want to stay. But at a certain point, you're going to want something more specific from someone else that I don't specialize in.
Right.
And that's okay. That is perfectly natural. So for me, the first person I hired was all sales. Turns out I got pretty good at sales. Then the next person I hired was all marketing. And then the next person I hired was it was sales, but it was a little bit different. It was a way to qualify people better and to pre-handle objections, which was a little bit different than my original sales coach. So all I want is one takeaway from every mentor. Just one, which sounds crazy for the amount that I've spent on mentors, but like those one takeaways, if you can just double down and focus on that, you can make a lot of money off one takeaway.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's an important message too for coaches who are listening to this, understanding that we each just play a role in a certain season of someone's life. Like referrals are, and like retention is fantastic. Referrals are great, but we need to know that at some point we're just not the person someone needs in that season of their life. And so the same goes for our own personal development. And I love that you've hired multiple mentors. I think that's such an important piece.
Yeah. And some of them, let me say this, some of them, they might be listening. I've gotten more from some, but my goal is one. That's my mentality. So I can objectively look at every coach I hired. Maybe I've been fortunate, or maybe I'm just looking through the right lens. I've been able to take at least one solid takeaway that's propelled my business from every mentor that I've had, every single one of them. And then some, obviously, like multiple, where they shined lights on all the different corners of my business that I'm like, oh shit, didn't know that was there. So, for you guys too, for your clients, that's how you should really be thinking about, like, how can I impact, this person? Obviously you want to fulfill on all the different things that you promised, but like, if there's one takeaway that I can bring this client, what would it be? And maybe it would even help to ask them that, on the re-sign call, on the offboarding call, however that looks, ask what their one big takeaway was.
Yeah. It's good. And it might be something that you don't want to hear. It might be something, well, you do it this way, I don't like this. And that's okay. You don't have to agree with everything. That's part of being a leader and your own. There's something called the thought leader's process. And that's when you hear something, you can say in your brain, you realize you agree with it and you add to it. Well, I agree with that. And you offer your own thought. Or if you disagree with it, you hear something, you're like, so-and-so said this, but I feel that, and then you fill in the blank. So you're not just absorbing people's information and instruction just at its word. Like, you're thinking about, how does this shape you? How does this shape your business? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And if you do that, you become a stronger leader, a better communicator, and you're going to find more success. And you'll be ready to pivot when you need to pivot.
Exactly. And I think you said something there too. That's a really pivotal thing. Collect feedback early and often. So I gave that little snippet that we're helping new coaches. We launched, was kind of, well, it was very secret because you won't find a post from me about it. So we did launch. We did bring in an initial beta group because I'm OCD. I don't want to offer anything to the public if I haven't tested it and gotten results, which thankfully we have gotten results. So I brought in like a small group of about 10 coaches. I was like, all right, you guys are pioneers. Okay. Let me just make sure this doesn't suck before I, start selling it to others. Turns out, thankfully we got it right, but there's so many changes that I've made in just the last 2 months, like so many changes. And it's because every chance I get, like if I got you on a call, I'm getting feedback and I'm not fishing for compliments. If you give me a compliment, great, it's well received, but I want to know what sucks. I want to know where we missed the mark, where, if there was a spelling error in the course, dude, tell me, because it's going to get fixed within minutes. But I think that's contributed a lot to, again, I don't want to sit and harp and brag on like the success, but like, I think it's contributed a large percent because I don't need compliments. I need feedback. So for the coaches out there, get feedback and be willing to ask, hey, does this program suck? And if you hear a yes, don't take it to heart, just fix it. And you'll be a lot more successful. Cam, where can people find you?
Well, it depends on who's listening. If you're like, I want to see more of what Cam does in Fight the Dad Bod, fightthedadbod.com. It's
Mhm.
Fight the Dad Bod on everything. FightTheDadBod.com, Instagram, Facebook,
Okay.
everything. Dad's Making a Difference is DMDmastermind.com. But if you're a business coach and you're like, he said some things about leadership and communication that are interesting to me. I do some consulting that way.
Sure.
I do free consulting calls. I love connecting with business coaches and seeing where they're at. So
Absolutely.
just go to callwithcam.com and it goes right to my calendar for a 30-minute strategy call. I just love to just chat with you and see where you're at and
Yeah.
give you some strategy.
I like that URL. That's real smooth. That's real catchy. Callwithcam.com. I need to maybe take a page out of
Callwithcam.com.
that. Cam, man, it's been a pleasure. I've learned a ton from you, just myself. Very, very interesting the way that you've, your journey, all the people you've hired, and how you've kind of created this compilation of everything is really interesting to me. So again, appreciate having you on, man.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.